Hello, Tyler Bryden here. I hope everything's going well. Recording this one on a Thursday, so I feel like I was nervous last week recording on a Friday. It's like more stories, more things are going to happen, but life happens, and so you adjust, you shift the schedule, and for me, what's important is keeping consistent here, recording these videos, and then sharing some clips out with you all. So thanks again, as always, for checking these videos out, and let's jump right into it. We got a lot on the go. Relatively breaking news, Carney calling a snap election. We'll get into that. He had an interesting week, stumbling and malaising through it. We had a lot of economic data circling on the interwebs this week about Canada, and it doesn't look good. We had Trump saying he wants a liberal government. Does he mean it? Does he not mean it? Ford each, what's going on there? We had a big Fed meeting in the US. We got people burning Teslas. Not news, but really excited to have some Android and iOS apps come in for speak. So I'll share a couple details on that. And then some personal news I'll share towards the end. And then lastly, I got a spicy take on the White Lotus and Severance that I'm interested in. Do people agree? Or am I blasphemous with this statement? So last week I was saying, it seems like he might be calling election, but there was a lot of rumor mill going on. Now we have official, reports. We haven't seen the final statement from Carney himself, but Bloomberg, Globe Politics, and CBC. So we don't know quite yet if voting day will be either April 28th or May 5th. But this is obviously something that Canadians were hoping for, expecting. But as Carney came in and started to take some action, I think a lot of us were questioning, when is this going to take place? And a lot of theories around when will Carney's popularity be at a peak? And the question, is it now when no one really knows who he is, or is it later when we know a lot more about who he is? That also gives Pierre more time to attack him, more time for him to make mistakes. At the same time, the incentive for him to be the shortest running prime minister. In that perspective, I understand why he might want to delay this a little bit. And so we've got the showdown. I documented a little bit of this last week. It's going to be pretty aggressive because this is a big moment in Canada. Now, slightly concerning, it seems that the majority, and this guy specifies Eastern Canadians, want another decade of what we have, with liberal popularity spiking as Carney's come into power and Trudeau has left. I think a lot of impact has come from Trump and these tariffs and the volatility there. There's the labeling and branding of Pierre as Maple MAGA. And so all these things have come together to make Canadians feel like Liberals may still be the best pick. So I believe this was from some polling. Let's take a look at Polymarket. And we can see Carney with 60% when being asked who will the next Prime Minister of Canada be after the election. And what a journey this has been. I think this was a dark moment for a lot of people who were hoping Pierre was going to win. With all these polling companies and organizations, there's been so much failure to get it right, and then even bias built directly into them, that a lot of the trust and faith, I think, is lost there. However, with Polymarket, it's been a very accurate predictor for several key events across the world. And Carney here with 60%, updating relatively in real time as news that this election is going to come. If you're a Carney fan, you're happy, or if you're a Pierre fan, you might not be. I think there is a large percentage of the population, like Zachary here, who feels this way. Whether you vote Liberal, you vote Conservative, in the end, it's 50 for state. So why do we say that? Frankly, the data does not look good, and there were some big charts floating around X this week. The first one looking at per capita economic growth, and we can see 0.5 from Canada, and as we go down this line all the way up to the US, we reach 20.7%. So this was the first table that made Canadians upset, and then this one came in next, comparing GDP capita growth across OECD countries in the past decade. Canada at the almost very bottom of this. And I think this is where we start to get into the lost decade talks here in Canada. And through some of these progressive policies, especially around immigration, the hopes that some productivity were going to come with this population boom, that is not what has happened. And Canadians are feeling it. We've never been more pessimistic than we currently are, which is very sad, honestly. You can see 2008 there after the crisis in the US. We're still happier back then. And even while doing this, we have increased the debt and put Canada in a very difficult financial situation where we have really no growth in productivity or GDP while our debt balloons. And now we're being threatened by the largest economy in the world who had supported us through many of these years when really we were on a pretty unsustainable trajectory. And what it truthfully makes me feel like is at least this round of the progressive liberal agenda government has failed. And one of my questions is really, who is happy with the last 10 years that we've gone through, especially as we come up to this election? Very simple signal of this, the World Happiness Report 2025. We've dropped from 6th place in 2013 to 18th in 2025. And yes, it does say something interesting about mirroring a wider decline among industrial nations. But I do think there's something specifically acute about Canadian situation and relatively it's self-made through our own election of liberal administrations over and over again, lethargy from the Canadian people, and comfort in the country that we thought we were and maybe once were. So loneliness and pessimism is taking root in the entire world, but Canada's happiness is slipping. In 2011, we were 5th. 2023, we were 15th, and now in 2025, we are 18th. And I could belabor this. Some people would point out the overall rankings that is among the G7 nations, Canada still leads in happiness, which is fascinating. And that some of these Nordic countries follow the same agenda that many Canadians are feeling betrayed by right now. And I'd be really interested to understand the differences between the countries like Finland and Denmark and Iceland who are properly executing this versus what we're doing. And is it their population sizes and culture and proximity to other countries? What is it that makes it different? And why is Canada slipping so much? But at least in some ways, the data that we just looked at about economic failure over the last 10 years must contribute somewhat to this. We feel that an upward trajectory in life makes us happy. Affordability makes us happy. When we buy something and we feel value in that, we feel happy. And a lot of these things have been eradicated from Canadian life in a very short period of time. I think there are clear signs of this. Things like Toronto having a 40% higher property crime rate than New York, with many of our cities increasingly having problems. And again, some may look at historical statistics and say, hey, it's better than it's ever been, and this is overblown through social media. But if the sentiment is so negative, and that is the perception, does that even matter? And if it's bearing out in economic activity and happiness overall, these things must be addressed. We have more people working minimum wage, and maybe our minimum wage is higher, but we're taxed more, and everyday things are less expensive if you're in the US. We had opportunities where we can literally look at the last decade and see that decisions that we made through the Liberal administration could have made a huge impact on where we would be today in overall growth of the country. But now with the threat of tariffs and our relationship with the US, and maybe we wouldn't even be in this relationship with the US if we had been on a different trajectory. I'm not saying we can go back in the past or we should, but it seems like we have a very important decision ahead of us here in Canada that might be coming quicker than some of us thought. You had rampant immigration run its course, and as those have been pulled back, people shifting to asylum claims. We have crashing housing market. And at least some of this feels like this group of people who has been complicit along with the World Economic Forum have had a role in this. And now we move on to an election, a crucial one here in Canada, where we as Canadians pick the direction of our country. So we're back to Carney. And Carney had an interesting week. Started with this executive order that isn't an executive order. We don't even have that apparatus in Canada. And this was related to the carbon tax that he brought in. And there's been all types of scrutiny on that they can easily bring it back. And he's just passing this along. doing a little magic trick. We had a question about how Mark Carney is going to deal with Donald Trump, and let's listen to his answer.
All with President Trump in the coming days. What are your expectations for the president in that call?
I think, let me say a few things. The first is that the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of Canada, but certainly the President of the United States has many responsibilities, and there are many issues. I can think of many geostrategic issues that the President is helping to lead on. And you can think of events most recently with respect to the Houthis and all the way through to trade and other aspects. So there's a wide range of issues to be discussed when we do connect. With respect to trade, I look forward to, at the appropriate time, having a discussion as two sovereign nations that is comprehensive, not targeted at one issue.
So we got another Kamala, and even just some of those mannerisms at the end were like exactly like Trudeau talks. It's almost like they transferred into each other there. And I don't know anyone who watched that clip felt confident this is the guy who's going to be able to handle Trump. So I think, as Marty up north here is saying, just let this guy talk. And this might be one of the reasons why this election is being called early, because the more scrutiny on Mark and the more he speaks himself, the more you realize with someone with all these credentials, all this history, all this expertise, he really does not communicate well. And it's not just that he's a bad communicator. He seems a little condescending and elitist.
And that you have now placed your assets in a blind trust, so you don't know what's happening to them going forward, but you knew what they were going into that blind trust. So what are they?
Look, Stephanie, I follow the rules of the Ethics Commissioner. I'm following them well in advance of any of the requirements, because I know that these requirements come into effect in months. We're talking days after I became Prime Minister. So I'm complying with the rules of the Ethics Commissioner, going through the process for 3 years at a time.
Within 120 days, which means you'll campaign in a coming federal election, most likely within the next 120 days, and are serving as Prime Minister now, with Canadians not being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you sought to avoid.
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
You are not open to any conflict of interest.
Yes.
Trump spent most of his time in the private sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. You start from a prior of conflict and ill will. I have served in the private sector. I have stood up for Canada. I have left my roles in the private sector at a time of crisis for our country. I'm complying with all the rules.
So there you go. Mark Carney getting a little testy with not that much pressure being put on him, honestly. And this is not some outrageous question that people are asking. This is something that a lot of Canadians want to know. And it is obvious already that there may be several possible conflicts of interest with Brookfield, other behavior, with his relationship with the European Union, the many roles that he's taken on, some that he said that he's no longer taking on, which have been proven that he still is. And I talked about in the last call, like trying to question my own gut reaction to who this person is and, this echo chamber that I might be in and why I feel this way about him. But as I watch these videos, even with an open mind, I see these red flags about him as a person that I don't want to be the leader of our country. Some people go far as saying he's Mr. Burns. And whether it's been the vote about moving Brookfield to the U.S. or these blind assets in his trust with no conflicts, there are some real concerns about Mark Carney. Now, someone has entered the chat, and that's someone who likes to be a part of it all. And that is Donald Trump. Let's listen to what he has to say about what's happening in Canada.
Isn't that going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
No, I'd rather
open the
deal
door
with a liberal than a
for
conservative.
China closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a liberal.
Isn't that going to make them more?
So this was quite a moment that started a conversation online. So let's parse out a few things. One was that this was a huge victory for Mark Carney and that he would be easier to deal with. That was one path that people interpreted from this. The other path was that Trump is saying that Carney is easier to deal with, as in he can steamroll over him, especially as it comes to these difficult times with tariffs and the relationship with the U.S. A third was that Trump doesn't want to see the liberals in power, but has seen the rise in popularity of the liberals as Carney has come into power. And so this statement was almost this 4D chess to detach himself from Pierre and the criticism that Canadians have for Pierre so that he can end up in power, and that Trump would truly prefer a conservative government in Canada that's more aligned with his worldview and agenda. It didn't take too long for Pierre to respond to this with the rally here on the Canadian flag behind him.
Leadership that Donald Trump wants, and it's why he endorsed Mark Carney yesterday. What Canadians need, though, is a leader who's tough and firm and stands by his convictions, a leader who will make Canada strong, self-reliant, and stand on its own 2 feet, a leader who will put Canada first.
So there's Pierre. Crispy as always if we side by side that against Carney and his response to Trump. I think there's a pretty clear winner there. And it shows that liberals are in a bit of a bind where Pierre is Trump, but Trump prefers Carney, and what button do you push? It makes me think of this meme where liberals are in a very interesting moment where we look at the statistics, we look at how people are feeling. The liberals I know aren't happy. They're not thriving. And yet for these ideological reasons, they want to continue with the Liberal Party. Just on a personal note, when I think about this, when you have years of, say, poor performance, and that is statistically proven as well as qualitatively felt, you're in a company, you're in an organization, at the end of that, you are fired. You are let go. Performance was not adequate, you are gone. And yet here we are after 10 years with proof everywhere we look, every stat, and yet we think that we should reward the Liberal Party by letting them stay in power longer. Truthfully, it just does not add up to me. It doesn't make sense, and I'm looking for reasoning. I think some of the reasoning is people don't like Pierre, and they say he's Trump. But conservatives in Canada are progressive conservatives. A lot of Americans would think of them as liberals. They're not. Ultra-religious, trying to take away women's rights, living in a previous century. And so I just feel like that scrutiny falls flat. Some people call him Tiny Pierre or whatever, PP. And maybe I just don't know enough of his history. I don't have that feeling for him. That doesn't mean I'm above scrutiny. I do think he's flip-flopped on immigration. The fact that he's been in government this whole time may not be the best thing. I don't look at him as this savior of Canada. I think we might be too broken and in too much disrepair that just one person leading and then that government is going to make it all work. This would be a monumentous effort by the whole country that's been involved. And one thing I did like in that Jordan Peterson interview, he talked about that he's going to need the help of Canadians after, not just to elect him, but continuously based on the situation that we're in here in Canada. And because of that, I do feel like Canadians, at least in some right, feel that way. Despite what Polymark is showing right now, crowds are showing up. He's talking about a lot of things that people agree with about building and reducing permitting and using Canada's resources to re-enrich ourselves, and highlighting what we truly do have here in Canada. So here we are, comparison, Carney and his wife and Pierre and his wife. And as a country, we have a very big choice to make right now. So I'll be continuing to follow along. At this moment, I will vote for Pierre and the Conservatives. And this is as a previous Liberal voter with a lot of progressive values. I just don't think you can reward the Liberal Party for the place that they've brought us to today. And I've got a lot of good things in my life. I am not as perturbed as maybe it appears in this video. I'm happy. I've got a beautiful wife. My family continues to grow. I've built a business that is doing well. And yet I feel like it's not enough. I feel like we deserve more, that Canadians deserve more, that we can do more, and that continuing on the same path that we've been is an injustice to us right now and those who follow after us. And so things might change as we near this election and more info comes about Pierre and his security clearance, or more info comes about Carney and his conflicts of interest. And as we learn more about both of these and put them on a global stage with a lot of cards on the table and a lot of scrutiny from Canadians who are unhappy with where we are, I have no real way to transition this. So I'll just jump right into the market and what happened. There was the big Fed day. Jerome Powell comes out straight-faced, rates unchanged. Uncertainty has increased. That's all. The amount of times I've heard the word uncertainty is ridiculous. 2 rate cuts, 50 bips in 2025. Growth projections down. Inflation up. There was some housing data that was a little better than what we thought, and so the market rebounds and jumps up a little bit. But man, it is sensitive right now and just all over the place, and I don't expect, whether it's soft data or hard data coming out, for it to last long, because the next data point, the next signal is going to come and the market's going to react or overreact. And so I just see a lot of fluctuation moving forward. Other crazy thing we got going on, Tesla's burning everywhere. Burning in Canada, burning in London, Ontario, at Masonville Mall. This was my home mall back in the day. The amount of movies I've seen there, the girls that I've taken on dates. It's just a crazy time where I guess the progressive, inclusive left have really just turned it up. And maybe there's some false flag stuff happening here where people are just trying to incite this, but there's been multiple videos now of people keying cars and destroying cars that have been caught on camera. This guy rubbing his ass and, and smearing poop all over the Tesla. People not know there's cameras on this? It's ridiculous. At a core level, as someone who thinks Elon is in a way a weird person, he did start an EV green revolution with made in America vehicles. And yet you have people like Tim Walz talking about the joy it gives him to see Tesla's stock be crushed because of what Elon's doing. This guy was awful. Tampon Tim. It's a weird, dark, chaotic time right now. I don't feel like that's stopping anytime soon. So I'll take a step back, focus on something that I'm fascinated about and working on that can take my mind off the politics and the chaos that's happening. Speaking of the company, it looks like I got some work to do on the header menu on this screen size. 200K people using it, transcription, translation, data visualization, analysis, really working with language data. Continues to grow, and super excited to be releasing Android and iOS applications here soon. I got it right on my phone. Feels like a big moment. You've always been able to access the mobile, version of it through the web app, but there's something special where I can see it, I can click it, and it's a real app there. So I've been recording on the app, transcribing automatically. I've got little automation that runs here with the chat, gives a prompt, creates the post, have a nice little zap, push speak through to co-schedule, and that posts it live on LinkedIn and Twitter. So super excited to just continue to democratize this technology, get it into the hands of people, and bring another channel to light with the iOS and Android. We'll be releasing those in beta very soon, and I think just brings the next level of automation and integration into daily lives if you're interested in this kind of technology. So I don't really plug that stuff much on these videos, but I'm super pumped up about this. It takes my mind off politics a little bit and love seeing the progress. Appreciate the team who's working super hard to get this live. I promised a spicy take on White Lotus versus Severance. Here it is. White Lotus is much better than Severance. People have been saying this season's been a slow roll. Nothing's happening yet. But how can you not say that about Severance? The only good episode that we've had was when they were out there in the wilderness. It's the only thing that's had some moment of excitement, some payoff, I think, even through this entire series. And people are going to hate me for this. I've done my best to hold on to the show, accept the hype of the world, and continue my enjoyment of it. And if they don't pay off in the final episode of this season, I think there's going to be a lot of people who have to admit themselves that they feel the same way. Whereas with White Lotus, even if the payoff isn't quite as crispy and clean as either previous seasons or what we expect for this season, the ride along the way has been a wonderful thing. It's been hilarious. The characters have been great. The shots have been great. And if you watched the last episode, you had a great monologue and moment here with Walter Goggins and Rockwell. It's been a little bit all over the place, a little disconnected or maybe seemingly sparse from previous seasons, but still, it's been an entertaining ride, and I'll still put White Lotus over Severance. And there it is. If you made it this far into the video, I appreciate you very much and was excited to share this with The more extended family and friends, we had some close friends and family know for quite a while here now, but it was a great moment to be able to share that, yes, it's true, baby Bryden is on its way, and baby Bryden is coming in August 2025. So I'm gearing up for that. A lot of my worldview is already changing. I can already feel it. Thinking about becoming a dad, thinking about growing our family, all the excitement, all the joy, all the stress, all the emotions that are going to come with that. So I'm in seeking mode right now. I know I've got it in me. I can be a great daddy. I love my little doggy, and he's become the best little doggy. And it made me feel much more confident in my ability to be a parent and someone who loves someone and can support someone. And so if you have tips, if you have recommendations, if you've been through it, whether you're a veteran or you're new in the journey, anything that you wish you had known when you were at my stage, I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone who cares about me, even if they don't know me that well, see that this is an exciting moment in my life. And beyond all the politics, beyond all the chaos, you can build this inner world for yourself that is happy, full of joy, and has so much potential and opportunity. So I'm very excited about that. Thank you as always for checking this out. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I look forward to reconnecting soon.